Hello everyone, welcome to BioCarrion. This video lecture is related to the topic genome annotation tools. First of all, before starting the topic, we need to know what annotation is. Any extra information associated with any document is called as its annotation. For example, suppose I am teaching you in class and you are writing down your class notes. You have the notes, you have the book, you have all kinds of information already related with the same, but still you write your class notes. So these are extra information which you have gained in your classroom. This extra information is called as annotation. Annotation includes comments, explanation, highlighting keywords, underlining certain parts of your answer. All these are examples of annotation. Now, what is genome annotation? Genome annotation is also called as DNA annotation. First of all, DNA sequencing is done. The DNA sequence is in the form of 4 base pairs: adenine, guanine, cytosine and thymine, ACTG. This is a simple list of letters. If it is not annotated, then this information is actually useless. So after DNA sequencing, DNA annotation is necessary, and DNA sequence, what I said, will not make any sense without any kind of annotation. Now what is exactly done in genome annotation? Stepwise I will tell you. In this, location of the genes are identified first. Second, all coding regions of the gene are identified. Third, start and stop point of the genome are identified. Like at start, methionine is present, AUG codon is present. At stop, the poly A tail, the thymine sites are present. So all these are identified with the help of genome annotation. Then finally, the function of gene is also identified with the help of genome annotation. Now, without knowing all this, for a single sequence, what I told you, it is a list of letters ACTG in a simple sequence. So this list of letters is actually useless if you don't know where the gene is starting from, where it is ending, where is the location of gene, which part is intron. Intron is the non-coding part of the gene, and which part is the exon. Exon is the coding part of the gene. So all this is done with the help of genome annotation. In the next slide, we'll understand this further. Now, what is the flow chart of genome annotation? What are the steps involved in genome annotation? Just now I told you, first step is genome sequencing. In the genome sequencing, you get the list of letters ACTG. This is a raw sequence. Once you get the raw sequence, statistical signal gene prediction is done on this in statistics, like what are the homologous regions, which regions are different, totally different, which are the non-coding regions. With the help of statistics, this is done. So many web tools, online tools are available to find out this kind of statistics, like BLAST and FASTA, which are very common. So in this in BLAST, local alignment of the gene is done, and you get to know the regions of different genes which are similar, which are homologous. And once the statistical work is done, gene, protein or RNA set is determined. You get to know which part is exon and which part is intron from that raw sequence. So the exon part is the gene part which may or may not code into the protein. So you get the gene set or RNA set or the protein set. Now all this is a part of structural features, to predict the structural features of the gene. Now once you predict this much information from the genome sequence, next is a specialized database search. You know that most sequences, once genomes are present in various databases which are freely available on the net, like DDBJ, DNA Data Bank of Japan, like EMBL, European Molecular Biology Laboratory, like GenBank, like NCBI. In these are the freely available databases present on the web. So in these databases also, this gene that you have sequenced may be present. So database search is done, and then the gene that you are having and the one that is present in database, both are compared. So annotation, this is annotation. Then finally, when you get the gene, you make the comparison between the original gene and your sequenced gene, then you can find out the gene function. So this all is a part of general database search. Finally, context analysis, genome comparison, compare the two sequences, the number of sequences that you have, you compare all the sequences and just try to find out what are the similarities, what are the dissimilarities, what are the homologous region, what are the open reading frames, how many proteins are present within this gene, how many genes are present within this raw sequence, all this you can calculate. So next slide, we'll talk about the general features of genome annotation. This is an active area of research in bioinformatics. It is very expensive. It involves the collaborative work done by many organizations. Many publicly available biological databases prove to be extremely useful in genome annotations. These are a source of readily available data. Just now in the previous slide I discussed about these publicly available biological databases like NCBI, like EMBL, like DDBJ, like GenBank. All these are available freely on the web, and these are very useful in genome annotation. With the help of these databases, the comparative account of the new sequences and the old sequences already available on the web can be done quite easily. And nowadays, because of these biological databases, this annotation work is totally automated. But if we talk 50 years back, this work was not automated. It used to be done manually, like finding of the AUG region was done manually. Humans used to find out these regions, but now everything is computerized, everything is put in a software program, and things are calculated on the basis of that. Now, where are the annotations saved? Just now we discussed the annotations. The raw data for annotation is the sequence that is present in the freely available databases. That is databases like NCBI or EMBL or GenBank. After annotation, this becomes secondary data. This is no more a raw data. So where is this secondary data saved? The secondary data is saved in specialized genome databases which are formed specially for this purpose. These databases are formed specially for the purpose of storing the annotations. Now I'll give you certain examples of some of the databases which save the secondary information, which save the annotations. First one, mouse genome database. This database collects and curates. The mouse genome database collects and curates annotation of mouse genes and alleles. So whatever genes and alleles of the mouse genome is larger than the human genome. So whatever genes and alleles present in this genome are there, these are taken, these are sequenced. The sequenced genes are present in the NCBI site. From there, these are collected, these are compared with the various other sequence. Let's say we are comparing it with the human sequence, and after comparing the two sequence, whatever data we get, we save this data we can save this data within the mouse genome database. Second is Flybase. This contains information related to insect family Drosophilidae. Third is Wormbase. So the famous animal, the famous worm, Caenorhabditis elegans. The information related to this worm is present in this Wormbase database. Another, there is a gene ontology website. I will discuss in detail about this website in the next slide. So in this website, various gene annotation camps and events are organized all the year round. So these contain large amount of information, and this gene ontology website is also a good source of annotations to the whole bioinformatics community. Now next, the National Center for Biomedical Ontology, that is www.bioontology.org. This is the gene ontology website that I was talking about in the previous slide. this national center develops tools for automated annotation of database records. And to talk something about this database, it is one of the 3 national centers for medical computing launched by NIH in 2005, and it is a collaborative effort of 8 countries: Stanford, Berkeley, Mayo, Buffalo, Victoria, UCSF, Oregon and Cambridge. All these are big universities of the world, and their collaborative work has led to the formation of this website. The primary goal of this website is to make ontologies accessible and usable to the entire world, because without data, without the information, actually it is totally impossible to it would be impossible to make further research in this field. And researchers will develop technologies for ontology indexing, alignment, peer reviews, etc. This is done in this National Center of Biomedical Ontology, and all information what has been done over here is saved on this website. Now next, let's talk about the types of annotation now. One is structural annotation and second is functional annotation. As the name implies, in structural annotation you will be focused on the structure of the gene. The proteins present in the gene, their 3D structure, their quaternary structure is assessed with the help of structural annotation. In the functional annotation, we are more concerned about the functions of a gene and the functions of the protein. So in structural annotation, first identification of genomic elements is done. In this, the open reading frames of the gene can be found out. The gene structure is found out, which I discussed just now, and location of regulatory regions of the gene is found out. Location of the coding region, that is the exons, location of exons is found out. Now in functional annotation, what is done? Certain biological information is attached to the genomic elements, and after attaching this information, the function of the gene changes totally. So this it becomes a different allele. It does not remain the same allele. So the biochemical function of this changed allele is studied. Then biological function, the biochemical function is studied, and then expression of this gene into protein, and what protein is formed and what is the function of this new protein. This all is studied in functional annotation. Next slide, types of steps of genome annotation. Basically, we have studied briefly the genome annotation steps in the flowchart also before. Now, to be precise, in detail, genome annotation has 3 steps, and these 3 steps are divided into 2 parts. So as I discussed before, one part is the structural annotation and second one is the functional annotation. In structural annotation, certain portions of the genome which do not code for genes, the intron part, these are identified. If you find out the intron part of the overall gene, then you can simply find out the coding part, also the exon part. This can help you shrink your genome and find out the exact sites where the protein, exact sites of the gene where exons are located, which will ultimately code into proteins. Second, gene prediction and gene finding, which parts are actually containing the genes. So the gene finding is done in structural annotation. In functional annotation, as discussed before, biological information is attached to the genes that have been found out via structural annotation, and once biological information is added, say a protein is added, say some carbohydrate is added to the gene. After doing this, you can find out the function, the changed function of the gene. It becomes a new allele, as discussed before. Now, first part of structural annotation is certain portion of the genome do not codes for gene. So, identification of these non-coding regions of the gene. You identify the start and stop codon. I discussed before also, at the start site, the start codon is present. Mainly it is methionine. Most of you are aware with this. So I have taken this example. The start region is 20 base pairs in length. Similarly, the stop region is also roughly 20 to 30 base pair in length. So if you find out the start region and the stop region of the gene, then you can identify the regions between the coding and the non-coding regions also, that is the region between the exon and the intron. Similarly, for stop codon, the stop codon region is rich in thymine. So this region can also be identified, plus there are three stop codons mainly: amber, ochre and opal. Out of these, whichever stop codon is there, you can simply find out within an open reading frame that where the gene is stopping. So this will help you identify the exact non-coding regions of the gene. Now next is gene finding. Gene finding is a tricky task. It is a very say expensive process, but once it is done, it is very important for research and development. A gene ultimately converts into a protein, and if you find out a new gene, means you are finding out the sources of formation of new proteins, which could be useful in various fields like medicine, like gynecology, like studies related to brain disorders, like study of cancer, etc. So gene finding, one of the best ways of gene finding is gene knockout experiment. So the gene of interest, this is knocked out from the animal's body, and then the animal is made to grow in the laboratory. So phenotypic changes of in the animal's body are observed. As I discussed before, we can change the gene in functional annotation. I told you we can change the gene by attaching some protein or some other biological structure to the gene. So once you attach a biological structure to a gene, the gene is changed. This new gene can be added to one model organism in the laboratory, and in the second organism, which serves as control, you can remove the gene. Then you check out the phenotypic changes in both the animals. So in this way you will be able to find out the function of that particular gene. This is gene finding. Second is blast FASTA. Researchers have shown that in genes, wherever there are similarity regions, the regions of similarity always have high number of protein coding genes. So BLAST is basic local alignment search tool. This tool helps you to identify the homologous regions of different genes, and multiple sequences can be aligned to find out the homologous regions. All homologous regions generally contain protein coding genes. Third is, if it is a prokaryotic gene, then you find out simply the Pribnov box, so Tata box. If you find out these structures, you find out the transcription factor binding sites. So these are the start sites of the gene. These are the promoter regions. So if you find these out, so this means simply you have found out the gene also. Again, next is find out the open reading frames. Open reading frame is that part of the reading frame is that part of a gene that can be translated, and so if you find out the open reading frame of a gene, ORF finder is available on the web. With its help you can find out the gene, and if you find out the open reading frame, means you have found out one gene also. Next is in eukaryotes you can find out the CPG islands. CPG islands are the regions of a gene which have high percentage of cytosine and guanine. CG sites are there, and C site is methylated in case of eukaryotes. Researchers have proved that 70% promoter regions are rich in the CPG islands. Next is find out the binding sites for poly A tail, that is regions rich in thymine, and these regions are generally present at the end of the gene or the exon. So if you find the end of the gene, you can locate the start of the gene also. This is another indirect way to find out a gene. Okay, again in eukaryotes, splicing occurs. In splicing process, introns are removed from the gene and only exons are left to be translated. After translation, protein is formed. So if you find out the splice sites, then you will be able to find out the intron also. If you find out the intron, you can look at the exon also. So this is another way of finding out the gene. There are certain freely available gene finding tools available on the web. Some of these are listed here. This is one is FGENEH, Gene ID, Gene Mark, GenLang, GenScan, Grail, Gene Finder, ORF Finder, Promoter Scan, NetGene, Gene Mark, Finex, Orpheus, all these are available on the net. I have given the URLs of all these gene finding tools, so you can use these and just go to Google and type in this URL and just try to find search any gene and take any sequence and try to find out the genes present in that sequence with the help of these sources, all these sources. Now this next slide shows 20 famous genome sequencing centers of the world. Every country has one or the other genome sequencing center. India has a genomic sequencing center at IMTech Chandigarh. At IISc Bangalore also a genomic sequencing center is present, but that does not count among the world's top 20. This slide shows the world's top 20 genome sequencing centers. So that you can see, most of these are located in USA, Texas, France, Canada, Japan, etc. I mean to say the developed countries of the world. Among these, number one is Advanced Center for Genome Technology, ACGT, University of Oklahoma. And second one is present in Texas. So that's it. Next is challenges to gene finding. See, when you sequence DNA, after you have DNA, you can feed it into automated sequencer to find out the sequence of the DNA. There are a lot of errors in raw DNA. So these errors account to the process of gene finding. In raw DNA, there are lots of problems I'll discuss further. Quality of sequence assembly may be poor. This distorts the data. See, DNA is simply a chemical made up of 4 bases: adenine, guanine, cytosine and thymine. So even a minor difference within the sequence assembly procedure within the experiment will lead to difference within the final data that you observe. There may be many mutations within the gene. Next, frame shift mutations. These mutations are also known as insertions and deletions. So if anything is added to the DNA, then sequence will be changed. Anything is deleted from the DNA, then sequence will be changed. Even the protein, even the start site, even the stop site can change because of the frame shift mutation. So this is a big challenge to gene finding. Sometimes genes are very small. These are very short. Handling of these short reads are difficult. Even an automated sequencer cannot read a sequence less than 500 base pairs, say. So if you feed a sequence of 300 or 350 base pairs, so errors will occur. There are many overlapping genes in a gene. What is an overlapping gene? One gene part contributes to more than one gene. So in this type of gene identification is very, very difficult. In prokaryotes, gene clusters or operons are there. Means for many genes a single promoter is there. So identifying the promoter and then identifying the genes present corresponding to it, because genes are present one after the other. So finding these is very difficult. Functional, okay, the last part of genome annotation is the functional annotation. Till now whatever we have discussed is a part of the structural annotation. Functional annotation is finding out the function of the proteins and the genes that we are studying. So functional annotation is again an important area of study in genomics and proteomics. In this I discussed before also, biological molecules are attached to the protein and the DNA sequence. This alters the structure of gene or the protein, and the function of altered structure is assessed. Now let me take an example to explain the functional annotation process. Say we are talking about major depressive disorder. After sequencing and careful gene finding, the sequence is fed into a software. Here proteins are attached to the gene. The proteins contain sites for attachment of various antidepressants. So once you attach the protein to the gene is changed. Gene is same, allele is changed. The allele is a different variant of the same gene. Now this allele contains sites for various antidepressants. So various antidepressants means more than one. So you attach one antidepressant to one, second to the second copy of the gene, to the third copy of the gene. So in this way you can study the effect of antidepressants on the same gene, on the same protein. Via molecular modeling, you will be able to find out the 3D and quaternary structure of the new gene or the new protein that is formed after attaching the antidepressant and the protein. And this new gene can be introduced into model organism also to study its long-term phenotypic effect on the animal. So this is functional annotation. So you can understand how this is so much useful. Functional annotation is so much useful and is such an active area of research. Now, similarly, functional annotation has been useful in various fields of life sciences. So, cancer cell profiling, complex disorders like Alzheimer's disease, schizophrenia, etc. have been studied with the help of functional annotation. I told you before also, gynecological studies like preterm birth have been studied. And genome-wide association studies, brain-related disorders like depression, anxiety, etc. have been studied with the help of genome annotation. So thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.